Hours before the most glamorous fashion show on Earth, chaos broke out backstage. Under the glow of 1,000 spotlights and the hum of last-minute rehearsals, one performer was facing a nightmare that could have ended her dream before it even began. Madison Beer, the star everyone was waiting to see, was moments away from walking out in front of millions when disaster struck. Her signature angel wings, the centerpiece of her debut, had become a problem no one saw coming. In that moment, one wrong move could have changed everything: her performance, her safety, even her legacy. But what happened next turned into one of the most unforgettable behind-the-scenes stories Victoria's Secret has ever had. For Madison, that night wasn't just another performance. It was a dream years in the making. She'd grown up watching the Victoria's Secret fashion show, picturing herself one day standing under those lights, wings glimmering behind her like a halo. So when she finally walked into her final rehearsal, the energy was electric. Cameras flashing, stylists adjusting sequins, and the faint echo of her own voice bouncing off the runway. Then came the moment she'd been waiting for: the reveal of her angel wings. They were breathtaking. Thousands of crystals shimmered under the light, feathers layered like a sculpture, every inch crafted to perfection. But the second she tried them on, the dream suddenly felt heavy. Literally. The wings weighed nearly 25 pounds. More like armor than elegance. She tried to move, to turn, to sing, but the weight pulled her back every time. Even a small spin felt impossible. Madison later told People magazine with a nervous laugh, "They're gorgeous, but I can't move in them." That line said everything. The wings might have looked heavenly, but for a live performer surrounded by dancers and moving props, they were a safety hazard waiting to happen. One misstep, one off-balance moment, and the biggest night of her career could have turned into chaos. That's when the entire backstage team went into overdrive. The moment Madison stepped off the rehearsal stage, designers and costume technicians were already huddling around a work table, sketches scattering like confetti. The clock was ticking, less than 12 hours until showtime, and the most talked-about performance of the night suddenly didn't have a workable costume. In a dim corner of the studio, sparks flew from tiny soldering tools as metal fittings were reshaped. The scent of hot glue and fabric dye filled the air. Coffee cups multiplied across every surface, next to trays of crystals and half-finished feathers. You could hear the rhythmic hum of sewing machines, the occasional snap of elastic, the low murmur of exhausted voices promising just one more adjustment. One designer was testing lighter frame materials, another trimming down the plume layers by hand. They weren't just fixing a costume, they were reinventing it from the ground up, trying to preserve the same breathtaking look but cut the weight by nearly 80%. Every minute mattered. Madison peeked in once or twice during the night, whispering gratitude through the chaos, watching a team of strangers give up sleep to save her dream. By dawn, the room looked like a battlefield of fabric and determination. And in the middle of it all, the new wings finally stood ready, gleaming under fluorescent lights like something born out of pure willpower. When the sun finally began to rise over Manhattan, the workshop lights were still burning, and there, on a mannequin at the center of the room, stood the miracle everyone had been waiting for: a brand new pair of angel wings. They looked nearly identical to the original, every crystal and feather perfectly placed. But this time the beauty came with something even more precious: balance. The new design weighed barely 5 pounds, 1/5 of what Madison had struggled with just hours earlier. The moment she slipped them on, her entire posture changed. Gone was the tense, cautious movement from the night before. She turned once, twice, then glided across the rehearsal floor as if she'd grown real wings overnight. The difference was instant. "It finally feels right," she said quietly, her voice a mix of exhaustion and awe. The lighter frame allowed her to move freely, to sing without strain, to flow perfectly with her dancers. Every step felt effortless again. The nerves were replaced by a calm determination, the kind that only comes after surviving chaos. For the first time all week, she smiled like someone who knew the show was going to be unforgettable. And in true Victoria's Secret fashion, there was one last twist. Those new wings, the ones everyone fought to create, aren't hers to keep. They're locked away in the brand's storage vault, preserved like a piece of runway history. Madison laughed when she talked about it later, saying she might have to settle for displaying the pink, crystal-covered outfit instead, maybe in a glass case in her living room, like a piece of art. By the time the lights came up, no one knew what had happened behind the scenes. The chaos, the sleepless night, the frantic repairs, all of it vanished the second Madison Beer stepped onto that runway. The stage erupted in soft pink light as the first notes of her song floated through the speakers. Her dress shimmered like liquid rose quartz, and the wings, those newly born 5-pound masterpieces, caught the light with every graceful turn. For a few surreal moments, the entire room seemed to hold its breath. The audience was mesmerized. Photographers leaned forward, flashes bursting in waves. Fans screamed her name as she moved down the runway with a confidence that felt both ethereal and real. The kind that comes from knowing you earned every second of it. Even the other performers paused to watch, smiling from the wings as Madison hit every note flawlessly. And then came the eruption online. Within minutes, clips of her performance flooded social media. Hashtags like Angel Madison, VS Show 2025, and Iconic Wings started trending worldwide. Fans called her look angelic, legendary, unreal. One viral tweet read, "She didn't just wear wings, she became the definition of them." But beyond the glitter and glamour, something deeper was happening. This performance wasn't just Madison's comeback. It was Victoria's Secret's. After years of controversy and rebranding, the 2025 show was meant to symbolize renewal, a move away from perfection and toward authenticity, individuality, and strength. And Madison, standing center stage, embodied that perfectly. She wasn't just performing, she was redefining what it meant to be an angel. That night, under the shimmer of the runway and the roar of applause, Madison Beer didn't just deliver a show, she made history. For years, the Victoria's Secret fashion show had been synonymous with a very specific image: flawless perfection, sculpted silhouettes, and a version of beauty that felt more like a fantasy than reality. But in 2025, that image began to shift. The company's long-awaited return wasn't about recreating its old glory. It was about rewriting its story. Gone were the days of sameness and silent smiles. This new era celebrated individuality, the kind of beauty that comes from personality, presence, and power. Madison Beer became the face of that change without even trying. She wasn't chosen because she fit an old mold. She was chosen because she broke it. Her performance wasn't polished in the traditional sense. It was raw, real, and deeply human. Between her vulnerable interviews and her commanding stage presence, she captured what this new generation of the brand was striving for: authenticity wrapped in grace. The show's creative director later said that the decision to spotlight Madison was intentional. They wanted someone who could bridge the gap between glamour and relatability, someone who represented confidence without perfection, elegance without ego. And when she stepped out under those pink lights, that's exactly what she delivered. The reimagined Victoria's Secret wasn't just about lingerie or wings anymore. It was about empowerment. Models of all shapes, backgrounds, and stories walked the runway that night. Diversity wasn't just visible, it was celebrated. And Madison's effortless blend of vulnerability and strength became a defining image of this new chapter. She reminded viewers that confidence doesn't come from fitting into expectations. It comes from breaking free of them. That shift, from perfection to personality, is what made her performance feel like more than a moment. It was a movement. Every dazzling moment on that runway hides a story the cameras never see. The pressure, the sleepless nights, the quiet panic that comes before perfection. Behind every crystal and feather is a reminder that beauty doesn't just appear, it's built, with teamwork, sweat, and sometimes a little chaos. Madison's wings became the perfect symbol of that truth. What looked effortless on stage was the result of an army of artists who refused to give up, even when the clock was running out. In interviews after the show, Madison spoke with a kind of calm wonder about everything that had happened. She said it was surreal to think that something so beautiful had come out of such a stressful night. "They stayed up all night for me," she said softly. "It was the kindest thing. I'll never forget that." Her gratitude wasn't rehearsed. It was genuine. You could tell she understood that what made the moment special wasn't just her performance, it was the collaboration behind it. That's what those wings really represented. Not just glamour or spectacle, but adaptability under pressure. The art of finding balance when things fall apart. The team could have panicked, could have compromised, but instead, they created something better. And Madison, in turn, carried that effort with grace, making it all look effortless. In the end, the story of those wings wasn't about fabric or feathers. It was about people coming together to protect a dream, and how even in the world of perfection, humanity still shines through. Madison called it one of the most emotional nights of her life, not because everything went right, but because everyone cared enough to make sure it did. And for her, every sleepless hour was worth it. The wings may have changed, but their meaning didn't. They still stood for everything the show was built on: strength, confidence, and the beauty that rises when the pressure is highest. Hours before the world saw perfection, chaos nearly stole the stage. But instead of crumbling, Madison Beer and her team turned that chaos into art. That's what made the moment unforgettable. Not the shimmer or the feathers, but the resilience behind them. It was proof that even in a world obsessed with perfection, real beauty lives in the flaws, in the fixes, in the quiet persistence that happens when no one's watching. Madison's debut wasn't just a performance. It was a reminder that sometimes the most iconic wings aren't the ones you wear, but the ones you earn.